So you ready?
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have today on today's podcast, we have Samuel Baddoo. He's a serial entrepreneur, a guy that I've been trying to talk to for a very long time, and considering the circumstances, we actually have the opportunity to talk to him today. So welcome, Samuel Baddoo, to this podcast. He's a serial social entrepreneur who loves finding unconventional solutions. And one thing that I really have admired by him, I know we met before, but if you look at his history, he's working right now as a co-founder at Restart, which we'll dive deep into that. I think Restart has a pretty interesting story to tell and a pretty interesting way to solve a problem that we're seeing right now. But besides that, he's also worked at Tech Talent Solutions, Empower Bus, Porter and Dale LLC, DB Schenker, Kitchen Express, Heal the World, Talent Restoration Academy. And one thing that I correct me if I'm wrong here, Sam, but if we look at your journey, the underlying fabric there is that you like helping people. When I looked at your resume, every single way of from the beginning, from Talent Restoration Academy, you were helping improve language skills. You went up to Heal the World, Kitchen Express, and now to Restart. You've been improving business operations, improving ways of people, the way that people live their life, and now you're actually helping people find and grow their careers through Restart. So hopefully I did a good introduction for you, my friend, and thank you for joining us here. And if you'd like to elaborate on anything that I just said with the introduction, please do so.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. We've been meaning to talk, and it's been way too long. So it's good to catch up here. Congratulations on starting the podcast. I know sometimes when we have thoughts of expressing ourselves or really showcasing something, we go through this whole debate with ourselves as to, do I want to do it? Am I qualified to do it? Is the space oversaturated? But the action of doing it in and of itself is something that you should be proud of. It's something that I'm proud to be associated with you about. And the introduction is great. Thank you. I rarely think of myself as having done all these wonderful things. But the one thing that I do appreciate is we're here for a short while, and so the impact that we can have is the impact we have on our fellow human beings. If everything that I can do leads towards a better life for the people around me, I guess that is the underlying calling that I find myself in.
For sure. So talk to me a little bit more about your journey to where you are right now, because I know you said on your, when I look at your resume, you've actually been not just here in the United States, but also in Ghana as well, correct?
I was born in Ghana.
All right.
Yeah, I was born in Ghana, lived there till I was about 17. And then I was one of the lucky few people who had a UN scholarship to go to study abroad. So I ended up living in Morocco for 5 years of my life. A few wonderful things happened there. But I did end up going back to Ghana before transitioning to the States. And we'll get into that as we go along. It's all influenced by work, searching for opportunity, and sort of the people that I've kept around me as well.
So I've never been to Ghana. Talk to me about Ghana, man. Talk to me about Ghana. You just let me close my eyes and just, through your words, I want to live a life in Ghana for this one bit.
So I'm going to try not to oversell it, but
no, sell it.
Ghana is Africa 101. So if you went to college and you had to take an introductory class that kind of opened your mind into what the whole college experience was, Ghana is the equivalent of that for exploring the African continent. Great people, very welcoming, hospitable. You will feel that right from the beginning. Very rich in culture, so it's a very proud people who really know where they come from and identify with that. And I've always said, growing up there, the one thing that you know is you're not living for yourself. You're living for the proverbial village that raised you, and this is one thing that carries across for anybody that you know from Ghana living in any other part of the world. I was born in the capital, Accra, which surprisingly happens to be the sister city to Columbus, where we find ourselves. So I feel just as home here as I do in Accra. Uh, very wonderful vegetation, life, hip. There's a lot going on there right now. So growing up there was a different experience than what life is here. It was a lot of fun in different ways. The way we raise our kids, they're a lot more free. We explore, and that kind of nurtures a sense of adventure that you would find a lot of Ghanaians and most West Africans carry with them.
And that's it makes me just want to go there right now and experience it. Well,
I
obviously,
mean, you should try it. Last year was the year of return. We had millions of people actually go back to go see the continent, to go see the country. Almost all of your celebrities that you can think of visited. So yeah, there's a lot of positive things about the country.
and I know a lot of like, and that's the same word I was going to say, the positive vibes that have come from the African continent, especially music, right? A lot of great
Mhm.
music has come from Africa. How about the culinary culture over there? The
Oh, the food is definitely different. Luckily for us, we have so many African stores that cater to Ghanaians who live here that you wouldn't miss it much unless you didn't know how to cook. So uh, that's what happens. But lots of different meals. The very favorite that I'll mention is waakye. Um,
what is it?
it's rice. It's called waakye, and it's
How do you
rice
spell
and
that? How do you spell that?
that's a Waakye. And it's pretty widely documented. It's seen as a breakfast meal, but it's one of those meals that you could have at any point in time. And once you eat it, I can assure you that you will not know life after that.
Oh my God! So I'm looking at Google right now, and it's I see a whole bunch of different variations. Is it a rice base? It's a rice base, you
Yeah,
said, right?
yes, it's a rice base with beans.
I see that.
David sometimes comes out reddish. Yeah, it is quite an experience.
All right. I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to pick your brain off of this podcast to see how can I make that over here at home. But no, thanks for. I think the reason why I'm asking this is because no matter
Mm-hmm.
who you are, your background typically shapes who you are as a person, either in business or in personal life. And there's something key that you said there that it seems like people in Ghana are not there to for themselves. They typically like to give back to the community, and I think that's kind of what resonates from your background, right? Which is, I guess, in a way, why I decided to ask that question, because we could kick it off with restart. Uh, what is restart? Because that way the listeners could understand. I think it's a really your uh, restart right now, the operations of restart are positioned in a very unique position right now because, as I mentioned to you before this podcast, and everybody knows right now, 6.6 million people are unemployed, have filed for unemployment. Some economists have actually projected that number to be over 10 million because the data is still lagging. Over 17 million individuals also was just reported that are facing, are affected by this pandemic. So from my understanding, you have been working on a solution to help people get out of that in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, um, in description, yes, that is what it is. But before I touch on what Restart is,
Yep.
I kind of want to walk you through how the company makes sense and where we fit in the fabric of our society, right? Um, so you mentioned one thing about how the way we grow up or the way we're raised tends to shape the people that we become. If you think of that, my experience here in America, my journey over the last few years, moving to Columbus, taught me something about our society. It taught me something about how we're addressing issues as a community and a little bit about where do we fit in. So if you put yourself in my shoes, all right, you leave whatever hometown country you're from, you end up in a new place. And I lived in New York a year before I moved here, right? You're lost. You're trying to find your way, and you're looking for a way to integrate, a way to get in. The first thing you're most concerned about is work, because without work, you can't really afford anything else. So you start off from there. Now you're going to have some place that you want to go sleep, right? You're going to need services. If you should fall sick in this new place you find yourself, um, someone is going to need to take care of you. Now, you're going to also need money to do anything that you need to do. So you're keeping your money somewhere, you're investing, you're borrowing, whatever it is, you're still going to need money to do that. And those fundamental things that we all need, regardless of where we find ourselves or who we are in reality, form the basis of restart need in the society. As a company, we work with businesses in these fundamental areas: healthcare, finance, and then residential real estate. Because we understand that everybody needs to sleep somewhere, everybody needs to have a healthcare solution, and everybody needs to have money either in an institution where they're saving it, investing it, or borrowing to fund the life that they live. Working with these businesses in these areas, we focus on making sure that their customers, the people that they do transactions with, the people that come to these hospitals, the patients, the people who live in their apartments, are continuously in meaningful employment, because we understand that without them having money in their pocket or having a good source of income, then it puts into jeopardy every sort of relationship that they have with these institutions. They begin to default on their loans. They begin to not be able to afford their health care, pay their bills. They can't pay their rent, which we're currently experiencing. Just yesterday, it was realized that 69% of the renting population, so 13.1 million rental units were pulled. 69% of Americans weren't able to pay their rent for April, right? That first week in April, they couldn't meet it. What do you think is the reason? It's because they've lost their jobs. And so that fundamentally is what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that people are employed so that they can continue to meet their financial obligations to these institutions. That's what we do.
So many questions I have, and I'm sure that the listeners would love to hear those, and I'll get to that in a second. But how did this come about? Because I think you started to allude to your personal journey when you came from
Mm,
Ghana to New York City,
mm,
um, and immediately I started thinking about my dad.
mm,
30, what is it? 40, 30, almost 37 years ago, he migrated from Dominican Republic. He had to make a decision. It was a choice that he made, that he had to. He was a professor, math professor in Dominican Republic. Also was working at the city municipal location down in Barahona, doing administrative work. Um, and during that time, it was a pretty good job that he was telling me. And he had to make a tough choice by actually having a career, an established career with a pension that was coming. And he looked at the situation where it was myself and my brother and my sister and my mom, and he said, I want their life to be better. So therefore, let me follow this path that a lot of immigrants take to come to the United States for the betterment of their family, right? That's one of the reasons why immigrants do it. There's many more, obviously. But when he came here, things were different. Uh, he needed to integrate, like you said. He needed to find services, because obviously coming from a location where he still speaks Spanish, but Spanish is dominated over there. Then over here now it's English. So he needed to find his way through. Money. Another thing that you said, you have to find money to integrate, and also whatever investment it is, whether it's personal or actually financial. Um, those are all important things I think you mentioned. So as you're talking about it, I'm kind of picturing my dad and all the other immigrants that come to this country or just elsewhere around the world that are looking for to better their lives, right? So, how, is that how did you how did you and your co-founder kind of just sat down and said we could do any other business, but this is a real problem right now. How did that come about? Those conversations.
So it will be like a stroke of genius to be able to say we sat down and strategized and figured out that this was the one thing. But it rarely happens like that, right? I've given you a little bit of my journey and my personal attachment to what we do at Restart, and then it applies to everybody, like the description of your dad that you talked about. But it's the very same fundamental reasons that causes people to leave one district or one school zone to go live in another neighborhood because they want their kids to have a better life. So they want to be in a better school district. It means that they have to find a better job to be able to support that. It's part of the reason why we have our own inequalities here economically as a city. Where you grow up tends to determine what kind of person or what kind of chances you're going to have. All right, so my co-founder Chad has been in the account receivables industry for well over 20 years, right? And being in collections means you're constantly seeing the effects of people not being able to afford the life that they want, be it medical bills, essentials, financial debt, student loans, regardless of what it is that deficit of what you want, what you need, and how much you can afford. You'll be surprised to realize that the average amount that people owe is less than $600. But this is what keeps people in the kind of financial straits that they have.
You said six hundred
Yeah.
dollars is the average, or is that what you said?
Yeah, it's below that. It's the average of what most people in collections are there for.
And that vicious cycle keeps them for $600. I mean,
Yes.
I don't mean, sorry, I that came out the wrong way. I don't want to diminish or just amplify the fact. I'm just baffled with the fact that that statistic is basically, to me, is mind blowing. That $600 is the average that the majority of this population is in debt.
Uh-huh.
And sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but nominally it sounds so little, right? But then the effect of it is outstanding.
Exactly.
The hit that your credit takes, all right? Sometimes not even knowing about this debt and what that starts to ball into, owing with interest and what it starts to become. Like all of these things compound. So Chad having seen that and being in collections, he realized very quickly that to really transform the industry that he was in, he had to think about things differently. So well before we met, he had already started that journey of transforming his collection agency into an agency that was helping the people who were in debt find jobs. And then when we met, it was a no-brainer because I was coming from my old place at Empowerbus where we were solving social mobility issues through transportation to meeting Chad where he is trying to help people get out of debt. And when we started talking, the alignment there was the fact that it's not just people who are in debt. It's how do you affect people's lives well before they experience any kind of financial hardship. And the most important part is the businesses that benefit from these relationships. All right. So that's what it came down to. And then it came down to how do we provide value? How do businesses provide value to their customers, their patients, their residents beyond the promotions and the discounts and the trivial things that really don't add on to your life? And so you start to think of the fact that if you as a business could help the person that is using your services, living in your property, secure their financial future to a meaningful job, imagine what you really mean to them. Like this whole experience that you shared, imagine what it means when my mortgage company tells me that, hey, I understand that times are tough right now, but we have a benefit um, with career development coaches and a service that can get you into a better job and help you grow that career that your father needed, that I needed when I moved here, you know, so that you're more secure and so that your relationship with us eventually is going to be more secure. That's where we found this opportunity in the market to be able to turn what traditionally people look at two separate markets, the job market and the business customer relationship, and merge it into one where all of these three parties, the job seeker, the employer who benefits, and the business who's helping their customer, could all live in this ecosystem supporting each other to advance the economy.
So the reason why I started talking about this topic in that manner was because yesterday I had another guest, and he was talking about failure. He said that he's afraid of failure, and I said
Mm-hmm.
I respect that, but I said for some reason I'm not afraid of it. I just embrace as that's an opportunity to me to learn something new. So it seems that, and I know that for sure, based on your resume, that's something that you highlighted as well, that you failure has made you to who you are right now as a person. So I know for sure that restart didn't start from a conversation just to sit down and say, hey, let's do this. It has been pretty much an evolution that both
Mm-hmm.
you and Chad have pretty much just came to where you are based on that on that experience. So I see that restart is 100% free, but is it 100%
free,
free?
free to the members, free to the people who are looking for jobs, and also free to the companies who are looking to hire this talent. But we do get paid. We get paid by the businesses who have a vested interest in the individuals that we're trying to help. So if you think of what your recruiting model is, right? Typical recruiters
That's
work
just,
for employers to get paid. We flip that around. We get paid to access the talent pool and then to help that talent pool exclusively find jobs that make them better off.
so I see over here that recruiting firms, they charge 20% finder's fee, while job boards are between 100 to 400 per job. But you guys have a zero cost hiring. What? So the question I have is, why hasn't other businesses consider this? Is it too costly for them, or have? I'm sure you
Um,
haven't.
so that's an interesting question, right? So why haven't other people done it? The whole theory of zero cost hiring in of itself is not new.
For
Um,
sure.
there are lots of people who hire for free, right? Uh, Nonprofits, um, workforce development agencies, like they do this job for free. Um, the difference is how we're doing it. By finding a way to offer something that people charge for free and making money in an entirely different way. And it's not, nobody else in our market is doing the same thing that we do. That's what makes it unique. And before we started, there were so many conversations about why are we doing something radically different? Why have other people not figured this out? Why are there over 10,000 job boards doing essentially the same thing? Getting employers to pay a monthly fee to post a job or a series of jobs, charging them for that, finding candidates who are looking for jobs and connecting them to these employers. The candidates get it for free, the employers pay the money. There's so many, like it's not unique. You get different variations. You get people who focus on niches, stay in certain industries. Um, Ours is different. Why? Because we believe that it goes beyond just going on the job board, sending a resume, and finding a job. Our piece is about advocacy and networking. The reason why I am where I am is because of the people that I am lucky to be connected to. Building that essential network right from the beginning, right? When I moved here, things didn't fall into place immediately. It took years to end up where I am. Within that period, I've made lots of friends, helped lots of people out, volunteered my time to help people out, consulted for free. but you build these relationships that later on propel you to greater heights. A lot of people don't have that. So we spend time building relationships with employers to really get to know them and know what they're looking for. And because we value our relationship, we're not charging these employers, but instead we take this relationship and this ability to network to connect the people that we're helping, the people that these businesses are paying us to help to these employers. And so it's free for the people, it's free for the employers, but the most important thing is to make sure that the employer gets the person that they're looking for and the person that we're helping finds the company that's good for them. And I don't
So,
think you can do that when money is the incentive.
so it seems like you're humanizing the experience.
Well, you have to be able to have some kind of competitive advantage. I don't think that robots are going to change the way we feel about human beings so long as we keep working with other human beings.
For sure. So walk me through that process. And so how does this process start as far as from the supply chain, whether it's a business, a debt collection, or a person looking for a job that isn't that? It's like it's a chicken or the egg problem. Now you have the infrastructure restart, you have the operations behind the scenes, you have the technology behind the scenes to pull the levers, but how does this work? Does company A come to you, company B, and then the person, or where does it start?
So it all starts by finding a forward-thinking business that wants to make a difference for the people that they serve. That's the most important part. When we find a business that we're onboarding, I'll give you an example of one of our clients. You take McLean University, or you take anything for real estate, um, Parkside Village, right, in Hilliard. Um, when we talk to an apartment complex like this, the first thing that they're concerned about is, look, how do I make sure that the people who live in my apartment are well employed? I don't want to be evicting people. I don't want to be kicking people to the curb. Neither do I want to have residents living in my apartment for free, right? So what's the balance? Finding that and getting them to say, hey, I want to be a partner. I want to become a sponsor, because that's what we refer to our clients as, restart sponsors, um, is the beginning of that journey. And then through our dedicated portals, our landing pages that we create for these businesses, um, they send out the notifications, the messages, the outreach to their pool of customers and let them know you now have access to a new benefit as a result of you having chosen us as your place to live, as your residential real estate partner, um, just like the way you'd offer a gym or anything else. By giving them this information and giving them the choice to sign up for it, all through the technology that we use, so we get to sign in and we know that this person in this place is saying they need the help. Then it goes on to our career development consultants to reach out to them, start working with them, evaluate whether they need a resume looked at, they need some more interview prep, whether they need help searching for jobs, and most importantly, connecting them to our employer partners. This is what the journey looks like. So on the whole, our platform isn't open to the public. To become a member, you're going through a business that you have a relationship with, and it's often we thought as a benefit to the company.
And that's why I wanted to ask that question, because whoever's listening that may be interested hey, let's face it, when you and I first met, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was having coffee, I think it was, and you were plugging away on your computer, and
Yeah.
I was actually wrapping up, and I was about to leave, but your story, you and your story, kind of just dragged me to just stay there in a good way, because I was so interested. And then I found out that you were also in the Army, and I was like, oh, I was in the Marine Corps, and we just, I don't know, an hour and a half later, I left.
Yeah.
So anybody who's listening to this, when we first started this conversation, the economy was a very different than what it is today. And the new norm that we keep on hearing is the fact that because of this pandemic, A lot of tragedy has occurred, not just in human life with a lot of grief, which my heart and condolences goes to anybody who has lost a life out there because of this, but also the economy, right? At some point in the previous podcast conversations that I've had, there's going to be a bottleneck of people, talent that's going to be looking for jobs. And the last thing
Mm-hmm.
I want is for you to be bombarded with this stuff, which is it'll be a good problem to. I think it will be a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But not sure. Has your business model thought about
Uh,
maybe including some type of public way to seek help? I guess.
so that's a good question. There are a lot of public resources that are out there and available to people. But to work with Restart as an individual who's going through some form of hardship, the easiest thing, or maybe not so easy, is to reach out to either your apartment complex, whether it's your bank, and let them know about what we offer, um, and ask them to reach out to us. We're actually currently running a way to help companies onboard and really reach those people by waiving the $500 setup fee that we usually charge companies when they onboard the first time, which has made it really easy for companies to come on board and work with us. So we're currently helping people find jobs in different ways. People are getting jobs even throughout the hardship that we're experiencing. But if you tell your apartment complex, hey, I heard about this company and I think it makes sense for you to offer it because I would need it, I will use it. Um, just ask them to go to restartworks.com, go through it, reach out. We're going to reach out to them. Or, you know, Samuel Baddoo on LinkedIn, send me a note. I'll personally reach out to them, let them know that this is what's going on. Um, and we'll work with them to try and get them as sponsors to be able to work with people like those listening who might be interested in this. We also offer a lot of scholarships every year through our public agencies that we work with. So we help a number of organizations to free services. So we take care of their people to help them get jobs.
Is it only based in Columbus, Ohio, or could it be nationwide?
No, this is nationwide because the people that we help are always dependent on the businesses that we're working with. So since our largest client, for instance, is Choice Recovery, that's a debt collection agency, they do collections all around the country. So we're helping people in New York and Texas, wherever they may find themselves. We're not based just in Columbus.
Okay, so there is an opportunity for so the question I had before, as far as this huge bottleneck that we're going to see when the
Mm-hmm.
labor economy opens up again. Have you and your partners, or you and your team, thought about the challenges that we are going to be facing, or that you're going to be facing as a business? Which again, it could be a good problem to have. And if so, what are those challenges that you're foreseeing?
Even though people are having difficulty finding work, and there are so many more people out of work than there are in work, there is still a lot of work out there requiring people to realign themselves. It might not be your best work. It might not be the work that you want to do, but it's the work that's going to put food on your table right now.
So as you're speaking about the realignment, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a very important point, because Governor DeWine, obviously you and I both live in Columbus, Ohio. Shout out
Mm-hmm.
to Governor DeWine. He's done a fantastic job managing this pandemic.
And
And
Dr. Amy Atkins, who's
oh
like
my
our
God,
superhero
Atkins,
right now.
ah, she's a hero, man. She is a hero. The whole team the whole team are superheroes. But yeah, for sure, Dr. Acton, the lieutenant governor, and the governor have been a dynamic trio, really.
Yeah.
Um, but right now, there's I think a career website on
Mm-hmm.
Ohio.gov,
Yeah.
and as I was getting ready for this conversation, I was thinking, I wonder if Restart has even been thought about from their perspective, because I think this would be a great, I don't know, a great project to undertake. I don't know.
There are so many of them right now. Where Restart is personally working with a group of volunteers all around the city. on the Can't Stop Columbus movement. So we're personally working on the employcolumbus.com. So that's also another resource. There are several other trackers that we have access to around the country that show us who is hiring, who is freezing, and these are all crowdsourced. So these are people who are working in these companies telling us who's hiring, what positions are available, and we have access to thousands like this. So on our part, because of the way we're positioned, we are helping organizations like this or volunteer groups like this to put up the process or contribute the employers that we know onto platforms like this, and that those are free resources that are out there. But on our part, the thing that we're doing is to make it accessible to as many businesses as possible for us to be able to help them. Even companies that are laying off their employees, we're trying to help them smoothing the transition by getting them into restart services. Thankfully, as bad as the situation is, it's also provided us with an opportunity to be able to help, reach out and help more. We
Sure.
haven't had to lay off any of our associates. We haven't had to lay off any of our talent development team members because they're constantly helping people now more than ever. So for us to be viable as a business, we also have to be able to increase the number of businesses that we're working with and increase the number of people that we're helping right now. So we're reaching out to employers, we're talking to employers, we're talking to even recruiting partners who have access to certain companies to help us put these people to work. So that's what we're doing on our part, aside contributing and volunteering to move this along by making the barrier to access of our platform easier for businesses so we can reach their customers.
So how does the scholarship piece work? Because that's something else that you say you work with, you and you deploy as well to some of the associates or members. How does that work?
So that's something that we work with nonprofits. In the past, we've worked with the Idea of Hungry. We still work with the the Colel Index. We work with the Jewish community as well. Even Ohio State. To take some of the students who are graduating or some of the members that they have within these nonprofit communities and be able to help them access the jobs that we have access to. So we're not able to do that in the thousands, but we're definitely able to do that for the people that need it so we can provide that as a service.
Okay. Um, the pandemic, man. I know that's I've tried to not talk about it too much or try to talk about positive things on the podcast, but it's here, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on that? And I thought and for sure it's a broad broad way to ask that question because we could talk about the medical impact, the
Mm-hmm.
financial impact, which we have been highlighting on it. But from your perspective, I know you're from Ghana. My family's from Dominican Republic, so I'm always on the phone. Hey, are you guys taking care of yourselves? What are you guys doing? Uh, because I know for sure, the government of Dominican Republic is a little different than the government of the United States, and you see how different governments are managing the situation. We start off with China. You see how they managed it. You see what happened in Italy. You see what happened in Spain, and now here. So for me, just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts as far as from a global perspective, local perspective, or just whatever perspective you would like to address it?
So I try as much as possible to stay away from any of the medical predictions or the implications in that sense because even the scientists don't fully grasp it, much less myself. But what we all identify with is the human implications of this, what it is doing to our relationships, the future of work, what it's making people realize. And those are the things that I can sort of speak about. Personally, I talk to my family all the time. The running joke is my sister put a padlock on the gate to make sure nobody's going out, uh, so they could stay safe. But yes, when you come from a place that doesn't have as many resources as we do here, you tend to worry more because if it gets bad there, the effects will be a lot more dire. Um, Thankfully, they're all keeping safe. Over here, um, we're learning to value the time that we spend with family a lot more. Like I mentioned to you, I am grateful, and a lot of people that I've spoken to are grateful for the conversations that they're having with their kids now that they didn't have before. The focus and the things that you're learning about them that you didn't know before. Even for spouses. I make jokes with my friends about how their spouses sound on the phone having business calls and what they say. you know, um, you realize that your spouse is a I'll circle back with you kind of person who says that on a call, and it helps you understand people in different ways.
Yeah.
We might have met later on when they were already in their professional life, but you're getting a much deeper grasp of what people are passionate about and what people care about. The Cancer Columbus group is also helping us realize that we can contribute in different ways, whether it's doing deliveries to your neighbors. So it is bringing out the human side of us um, that we might not have realized that we needed to focus a lot more on. We're realizing how small and insignificant we are as humans in the grand scheme of what nature is. So yeah, it's a humbling experience there too. Professionally, we've been positioned to work remote for a while. A lot of people haven't, but what
Mm.
this is helping us see is that as individuals, we need to start thinking of what our individual contributions to society are professionally. Um, are you the kind of person who depends on having a stable job or an employer to be able to put food on the table or add value? Maybe this is a time to reevaluate and see what skills could I learn? Um, where is the future going to? Because this event, whether we like it or not, is going to accelerate a lot of things. The use of technology, robots, is going to accelerate how things are done more remotely. Business costs are probably going to come down in the next few years, keeping it to just essential travel rather than every meeting has to be a meeting in person. We're getting a lot more comfortable using more tools that maybe if you didn't feel familiar with, well, you're definitely going to be familiar with it now. And those are the things that I'm noticing that this pandemic is really bringing to fore.
That's true. Um, can I ask you another question? And I want to keep on the same flow of the conversation, but from entrepreneurship perspective, I was having a conversation last night with my wife, based on a different topic that I had earlier on, and basically the conversation was that should I personally take a step back and just relax and chill and not do anything and just instead of go 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 uh, because of this situation that we're in. We're on day 35 of lockdown, um, and as an entrepreneur, I wanted to hear your thoughts on because I heard you say a couple things, buzzwords, opportunity, things that you could do now to position yourself in the future. Uh, Not in those exact words that what you said, but that's kind of a way that I understood it. Uh, but from an entrepreneur perspective,
Mm,
how do you see people right now that are that may have an idea or may think that hey, this may be a good place to actually think about starting a business or not starting a business, because I know you talked about failure, and to
mm,
see if you could highlight what were those failures um,
mm,
in the past. And I think right now, like I said, I think failure is a good thing. You could actually try building a podcast, kind of like I did, right? See how that goes, or do other things, right? And I don't know. I just wanted to hear from your entrepreneurship perspective. As you did speak about personal business, but then I think there's another fabric that is that
mhm,
entrepreneur fabric that a lot of people say they may be entrepreneurs or they want to be entrepreneurs, but unless you actually push forward with it,
mhm.
it may be a little challenge there. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's a pretty good question because um, when we look at it from the overview, the global perspective, it seems all bad, right? But there's also that reminder that even in the last downturn, there are businesses that started and there are businesses right now that are still raising capital and doing well. So this is a time that allows you as a wannabe entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, to really look at what should I be focusing on? What trends are coming to the top? Essential businesses are always going to be essential businesses. People are always going to need to eat. People are always going to need to sleep. People are always going to need to take care of themselves, have health care. So you're realizing that positioning yourself in one of these areas um, is an opportunity that you can take advantage of. So the second thing that I'll talk about, if you're already an entrepreneur, people haven't stopped selling. People are just realizing that you're doing it differently. Targeting has gone to shit. It doesn't matter whether you're targeting everybody here or there. We know where everybody is. They're in their homes. So right now, in the midst of all the people shooting out a bunch of emails going out, what should you be reaching out with? It's a time for you to build meaningful relationships and empathize. That's what you should be focusing on right now. Not how much can you give me? Can you sell? Can you buy? No, it's how can I be of help? What is your daily life like now? How could I contribute to that? Do you just want to reach out and talk? Maybe I should ask you about the ideas that you've always harbored for a long time. Maybe you want to talk about that. This is the time for us to identify the humanity in all of us and build bridges and relationships around that. The other thing that I'll talk about is the opportunity for you to really think of where work is going, what you need to be learning to be competitive when things start going again. Maybe you've been wondering what big data is all about. Maybe you've been wondering how to get more insights into your customers. So, do you want to take an AWS course? Do you want to take a Google Cloud course? Lots of courses have become free as a result. We have time on our hands to do different things. But essentially, the most important thing that you can do is position yourself for the future and also to take care of yourself better. We wouldn't probably have this chance in our lifetime again, but this is the time for you to meditate, to slow down, not to give up, but in your case, especially to slow down and focus on what is the most important thing in our life. And you never know what kind of insights you might find.
Yeah, man. I think the doing nothing approach is probably not a good. I think that's what you're saying, right? Doing nothing is probably not the safest solution. I
Yeah.
agree with that. But you could do nothing for a couple days, a couple weeks. But at some point, I think it may be good to actually work on your brain, work on your mind, body, and spirit. Because one thing that I do is I always try to go out for a walk or a
Mm,
run because that's the body part, but the mental piece is these conversations that I'm having. I'm having diverse conversations with people, and I'm hoping that the
mm.
listeners get to hear what you just said because I think you were right on point. How about your failures? What kind of failures can you highlight two or three that you've gone in the past? Because you mentioned food delivery.
Mm.
You mentioned food delivery a couple minutes ago, and I see that you started a food delivery business a couple of years ago, way before, way before
Very
the
short lived.
very short lived. Nevertheless, I think it's an
Yeah.
opportunity an experience that you went through. When I saw
Hmm.
that, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. That was he was ahead of the Uber Eats of the heyday, right? So
Yeah. Well, nothing happens easy, and I'm very far from where I want to be. But even with that, lots of failures. All right. So, um, you brought up the food delivery business. I think what years ago when I had this uh, seemingly bright idea that maybe people shouldn't leave their home to get their deliveries for food. Yeah. I didn't consider a lot of things. So part of the reason why that business failed was because I really didn't think of what the cultural effect of what you're offering. Great business idea, made sense for a lot of people, but it made sense for very few of a bunch of people that we could have reached. Right. So in Ghana at that time, going to the mall was still a big thing for most people. So I realized that the customer base was mostly expatriates, whom for whom convenience was more important. But for the larger community, larger society, No, they didn't really value convenience. They valued going and going over the prices and talking to the person selling. And that was the cultural piece that we didn't really pay attention to. So that is the failure that I had to learn from, to realize that it's a lot more important for you to start talk to people, understand them, and understand how what you think your solution is fits in their life. It doesn't matter whether it's the greatest solution ever. If it doesn't fit in who they are, then it's not a good fit. The other thing that I'll talk about is evaluating relationships. I've learned to go in a lot of ways when it comes to that. When I was much younger, it's about the merit of the idea, right? What I've realized now is that a lot of ideas die and a lot of projects are not able to go forth simply because all we thought about was what you had to contribute in terms of that idea. Um, and what I've learned from that failure of experience in of itself is that value the people that you're working with for the fact that they want to be associated with it, that they're passionate about it, and explore that passion. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing, that they want to go the long haul with you. Not that they like the idea or that it's fascinating. That will not sustain a business, that will not sustain a relationship. It's the fact that you want to do the journey together is what gives you the ability to figure out the challenges along the way. Um, and the third thing is not something that I'll call a failure, but it's more of a lesson that I've learned, and it's been taught by different people to me. It's to always have a target on someone that you want to be. You know, if you don't have any role models around you, um, then don't look to yourself as being the only driver of success. Look to someone around you that you can peg yourself against and constantly emulate on how to improve yourself. I think that is something that has improved and helped me along the way.
So who is that person right now?
Different people, lots of different people. One of them locally is Brett Kaufman. This is someone that I've admired for a very long time. And I've also had the pleasure of doing business with Kaufman Development, who's one of our clients. And knowing and seeing what he's done and the things that he's been involved in and how he sees things, um, learning from those things, his experiences and his mistakes, has helped me focus more on some more important things than just science metrics.
So what example from Brett's background or Brett's business experience kind of inspired you to say he's one of those people?
Helping people is a lot more important than just the money. Don't start with the money. Start with the reach, the impact. Really focus on that. And you know, if you look at the Gravity Project and what it represents for a place where you live, an apartment complex will mean more to you than just a place to go sleep, which is just the function of it. And looking at all of the complementary things that go to enhancing the lives of the people who live there, that was a hard decision. That was something that wasn't so popular. As he champions that and that goes on, you see that making those hard decisions that don't make necessarily financial sense to the people that um, are funding your project, but that belief in that the impact will build itself and the impact will make financial sense eventually is something that he's been able to do very well and something that I'm learning to lead with.
You know, as you're bringing up that topic, I told myself I don't think I ever asked myself that question. I don't think I've ever really considered that, but I guess I have in a way. I have in a way
Mm.
because have you heard of Ulukaya? Hamdi Ulukaya? He's
No.
the CEO of Chobani.
Oh, so yes, I definitely have heard his story. I didn't remember his name. I've watched his TED Talk as well.
For
Yes.
sure. All right, so that TED Talk, I think it was a TED Talk that I saw, or I heard something else. I think it was a TED Talk that I'm about to talk about. Obviously, he doesn't know me, and I don't know him. Uh, but when you start talking about that, I was like, oh, wait a second, that's kind of, I think that's what he's talking about, because what he did, as you know from his TED Talk, he acquired a property that produced a yogurt, um, but he started off that business, that vision that he had. He bought it, not because he wanted to make money, but he bought it because he obviously he had the means to do it. But he wanted to make sure that he kept those people employed, right? So when I saw that TED talk, I was like, wow, that's a lot of CEOs may say that they think like that, but to actually act like that, that's a very different doing and acting it out just to kind of say, hey, this is our vision and our mission for our business, but actually
Mm-hmm.
living is a whole different
Mm-hmm.
ballgame. And I can't think about the other. There's another person that came to mind right now. He's based out of Washington. He is uh,
Oh, you're talking about Gravity Payment, CEO, long-haired, who
yes,
pays a minimum of 70,000. Yeah, I've actually
yeah,
spoken to them like a couple of years
Dan
ago.
Price.
Yes.
So if it's two people, I guess if it's two people that come to mind, him, the Chobani CEO, and the Dan Price. I mean, think about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just reducing your salary to just put it back into your workforce, and that came back to that benefited not just everybody there, but it benefited the business
Mm-hmm.
threefold, tenfold. I don't know. So I'm glad that you mentioned
It
that,
takes a
man.
leap of faith to be able to do that, and the most beautiful thing about what Dan did was over 10 years we've been able to see where his company is. Right, um, people just thought it would be a 1 month thing, a 2 month thing. At some point in time, it would die because our idea of what capitalism um, was that you just had to make it at the top. It was just shareholders over everything else. And what he is showing is that it is sustainable to take care of the people who create the value, and that in itself will take care of the longevity of the value.
That's true. So you said you've actually spoken to Dan.
Yes, a couple of years ago, I reached out to someone who worked there because I was really impressed by what he was doing, and also we're evaluating a payment solution, so that led to that whole conversation.
Got it.
And
So
also because I thought he should be in conscious capitalism, which is the group that I'm in, and I think that that carries the same values that he expresses.
okay, so you don't know him at a personal. It's just that one.
Yeah.
So how about the Porter and Dale? That was another business that you were co-founder on.
So Porter and Dale was a consulting firm before I moved here. That was really uh, where I got to the point where I was like, okay, maybe I do have something to offer to the world, right? So let's go out and explore it. Um, Prior to that, when I moved back to Ghana in 2012, we had started this company, Heal the World, with a bunch of other friends who had lived abroad and come down. But it was basically an entrepreneurial movement that was meant to spur other people to go on. I did that for about a year, and then did the grocery delivery business for a while, and then I stepped back from that. I was like, okay, what have I learned in all my life, my school, the things I did in Morocco? I was also part of different groups there, very involved in tech back then. And the one thing that kept coming back to me was the fact that over 80% of the businesses in most emerging economies, Ghana included, are all very small micro businesses that never grow beyond the parents or the two founders who started, right? It never goes beyond the creators, the initial producers, and that was a problem. There was no scalability. The opportunity was that there was also no consulting firms that were focusing on these micro businesses or small businesses. We had the big four firms who were focused on the multinationals, the Coca-Colas, the mining companies, the GEs, but nobody really cared about how do I help someone move from two people to five to 10 to explore a new market. So I came together with a lawyer friend of mine and then an accountant, and we started Porter and Dale to be able to provide strategy consulting and HR management, as well as other legal financial services to small startups and small businesses. And that's what I did prior to moving to the States, because I ended up having a client from Canada that worked out really, really well. I really thought I could do more in my life, so I wanted to move to North America, and that kind of led the transition.
So, as far as lessons learned in there, can you highlight at least one or two?
With the business itself, uh, when you operate in Africa, cash is king. All right. Nobody makes venture dollars. You don't keep running an Uber or a WeWork. A WeWork will never work in any African setting or in most emerging economies. Just wouldn't. You had to be cash flow positive right from the beginning. So what I learned was provide value right from day one, but also make sure that that expectation of this is a business and you had to provide value that people were willing to pay for had to be established right from the beginning. So no matter who I'm working with, the goal is to move them forward, but the goal is also to make sure that they're in a position to pay. So that mentality is something that I've learned and I carry with me. Um, I don't want to go into any loss making business or a business that is just not of a need enough that you can't make money from it. You need to depend on other people, which is not for me. The other thing is that seeing opportunity where people don't see it is something that we have to learn to do. Just because it's not popular, just because other people aren't making money from it, doesn't mean you can't make money from it. Sometimes what it requires is for you to see things differently. It's for you to do things differently, not just the way everybody's done it. If you're willing to work with people, everyone wants to move ahead. Everyone. Nobody wants to stay in the same place. Nobody wants to just exist. So if you find a way of unlocking that need,
That potential.
yes, for where they want to go and being a catalyst to that, then you would unlock a certain value that they have the ability to pay for. Us providing consulting services in a place where it's a product based, commodity based economy, offering advice to people just wasn't a thing most people were familiar with. But I managed to make money from it because you really had to be aligned with where people wanted to go. Could you help them raise money in their businesses? Could you help them seek out new markets? Could you help them sell more? That is what really mattered. It wasn't could you help them be more hyped or know them. So it wasn't marketing, and that was a lesson I had to learn to help me position not offering marketing services and focusing on offering strategy consulting and real tangible benefits that came from that, being able to expand beyond yourself.
So it seems that you are forward thinking, right? In this stage of your life, you were forward thinking as far as coming up with a solution that you definitely saw the need from food delivery service in Ghana, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Also, the business consultancy in the same region. So let's fast forward to right now. Let's just say today is May. Let's just say today is November, and you were placed in the position to actually shape up the healthcare system in United States of America or elsewhere in the world. And from the business that I started before, it was pretty much I'm thinking like you, right? Thinking ahead on solutions before shit hits the fan, right? From a risk management perspective, that's kind of where I was, just helping companies mitigate. But for your perspective, in your expertise, if you could improve the healthcare system, um, based on what we know right now, just what we know right now, to how can we improve it going forward? Be it PPE gear. I was blown away when I found out the number of hospitals and the number of beds there are in the United States of America compared to the amount of people that we have. It's just
Mm.
it just didn't balance out. And I'm
mm,
assuming that there's a lot of smart people out there that saw that problem, saw it,
mhm,
definitely saw it because they had access to the data, but did they really think about, hey, raising the hand and say, hey, we have a problem here. And I'm sure people have done it. And I should do my
mhm,
research. And I don't want, no disrespect to anybody who has done that, but just from an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, we love problems because we love to tinker with a solution. It may not be the best
mhm,
solution, but that solution that may not work may lead to something else, right? Kind of iterations, and then you just
mhm.
deviate, and then at some point you have Samuel Baddoo that created a great solution for the healthcare system. Uh,
Uh,
so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? If you were to be placed in that position?
I mean, I am sorry to disappoint you, but the interesting thing is when it comes to healthcare in America, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I think there are a lot of smart people who are working on this. Um, but a lot of things are so because our system allows it to be so, and also because it makes financial sense to the players involved for it to be so. And nothing is a much bigger motivator than money is, right? Or the ability to make profit. So I'm not even going to say that they could do this, they could do that. This is an extraordinary situation that is unearthing a lot of things. The one thing that I can comment on, the one thing that I do think a solution is possible for is the vast amount of inequalities that this pandemic is unearthing. When it comes to access to healthcare, quality of healthcare amongst different groups of people, um, we're seeing how disproportionately African Americans are dying from this coronavirus um, pandemic in relation to the numbers that actually make up the cases. So those are stark numbers and data that you can look at, right? So it goes down back to what people are eating, how they're taking care of themselves, access to health insurance. All those inequalities are manifesting themselves now. And those are things that we can work on. Whether it is promoting better health or better eating in particular groups, having programs that target better health in certain places, because if people are healthier, have fewer underlying issues, then they will weather infections and diseases a lot better, right? So rather than focusing on the whole health system and talking about lots of issues that I probably don't know enough about to be able to change, I do know enough about human beings and know about the fact that when people understand that their life is at risk, and they could make minute, tiny changes over a period of time to address some of those issues, then we're starting to see certain economic opportunities. Maybe we should look at um, food deliveries that could be going to certain groups. Maybe we should look at the mobility issues that causes a single parent who's getting off of work and has to go to a grocery store and still make it to her night job, yet having to pick up her child at daycare. When you think of that, it is very hard for her to go and make it a good meal. So maybe when we target our mobility solutions, we could have one like Empower Bus is doing that could pick up the parent and pick up the child and have the groceries picked up by the bus so that when you got on the bus, you had all these three things concentrated in one, and you could go ahead and buy yourself some time. Maybe we need to look at more innovative solutions to addressing the socioeconomic lives that we're living rather than the global health system that we might have fewer influence or less influence on. So that's where I will focus my attention. That's where probably if I had a solution, I would want to address.
and I think a valid point because, like yourself, I'm definitely not an expert in the healthcare field. I don't have a medical degree. uh, Nevertheless, I think you mentioned some pretty interesting points there because you don't want to tackle the problem because that's a huge problem, right? You don't want to tackle the entire problem, but make small changes that may have larger effects. not
Mhm.
now, but later down the road, right? And not in the short term, but in the long term. And I think Chicago right now and Louisiana, the data just reflects exactly what you're saying. That 70% of the African Americans patients in Louisiana have been affected by this. That are 70% of them have been African American, while in Chicago is 72%. And those are drastic numbers, right? And my heart goes out to everybody in any city. But the majority of my clients for the business that I told you about, they were in Louisiana, so I see and hear exactly what you said. That we love to eat, right? we we enjoy eating anywhere we go, but depending on where you are in the world, your culture is how you eat is driven by your culture, right? And we can make some smart choices, or we could just continue on with living our lifestyle. And I think that's what you're saying. The impact. Another thing that I think would mention, and I would piggyback off of your making those small social economic changes, um, is awareness, meaning that when you have people in the medical field telling you exactly what the problem is, these are possible solutions that we could take. That awareness and actually implementing that awareness in yourself and in your daily routine could benefit any society, and that's free, right? It's free. It's nothing out of this world. But if you're ignorant to the fact, if you take that those comments and just kind of brush them away, um, and say, "Oh, number one, that's just hearsay. Number two, that could be just political propaganda," or you start questioning too much in a negative way. I think that's a
Mhm.
huge that could be a huge opportunity as well from the awareness perspective. That if washing your hands and just keeping away from people, although we're human beings, we love being next to each other as far as communicating and stuff, but something as simple as washing your hands and not, continuously touching a whole bunch of things, people just have not, now they're taking it serious, right? But when this first rolled out in the U.S., it's just like there was just, I'm an American. I have my rights. I'm not gonna. That's, I think, in my opinion, awareness tied to what you just brought into the mix could be possible solutions going forward, right? And they're free, like you said.
Mhm. Yeah. I will say that giving people information doesn't always guarantee that they're going to use that information, and that's where we start to look at things like behavioral economics. So um, I've always been fascinated that the way you tell people something could influence the way they use that information, whether they agree to it, use it, and that's where creativity comes within things that seem seemingly rational and straightforward. I've always loved Dan Ariely for the work that he does and the teaching that he provides. But if you think about it, um, we all have cultural biases and cultural differences. So
Yes.
the same set of information given to different groups of people will not be used or will not address issues in the same way. So we need to start looking at how we relay information differently and how we suggest things differently. And I'm pretty sure you've heard people's obstinance when it comes to wearing face masks because they've highlighted why psychologically and socially an African American might find it difficult to keep to that advice because they believe it will put them more at risk. And these are things that we can't just brush off or ignore. If I think of where I'm from, being African, um, if we talk about social distance as being one of the most important way by which we flatten the curve, and then you also take into consideration how most um, emerging economies are set up, it makes it extremely difficult. And that's why you're also seeing that African economies are taking a much more drastic approach to shut down than you saw with the response in the West because of some of these things. And so I always believe that information is good, but information applied more creatively yields better results.
That is so. That is true. The words are definitely powerful, depending on how you disseminate that information. The timing is critical. Who says it is critical. How you say it is critical. And at the beginning of this conversation, you spoke about empathy. So you also have to think about the empathy side of it, depending on the situation. Obviously, all this conversation is all highly dependent. But you spoke about drastic measures being taken in the African continent. What are those measures?
You could look at how quickly uh, the South African government shut down their economy because they realized how at risk it was. Same in Ghana, they've been on lockdown for what over a week now. Same implications, and these are economies that don't have as much resources to even withstand it. These are economies that are largely informal. So most people earn a living by either uh, in agriculture, farming, or selling goods, one way or the other. If they cannot go anywhere, you can understand the implication, but they understand that that risk to the economy um, is way less compared to the risk to the population itself, the society itself, and the health implications of that. So you have over there the military in a lot of countries enforcing this, even going as far as flogging people in public to make sure that they adhere to it. It is drastic by every measure when you look at it here, but it's also what they understand has to be done back there to be able to make sure that they can get through it.
You know, I started seeing some posts on Facebook about in South America where some law enforcement or police officers or military were either number one making people do push-ups, and while they were doing push-ups, you've probably seen it, making people do push-ups and then whipping them while they're doing push-ups, or just publicly shaming them to say, "Hey, this individual is not following the rules." But as you're talking, I started looking up on the African continent. Same thing. You have I see over here Ugandan policeman hitting vendors who refuse to clear the streets. So law enforcement is and now we're taking this topic way now we're going off script over here. So um, enforcing the law is applied very differently across the world. If you were to have that here in the United States, people would just be up in arms, right? But like you said, it's this, like you said, this is their norm, meaning that in Dominican Republic, as an example, if you and I were to be on vacation and they were to stop us for whatever reason, there comes a point where I would be able to just in Spanish joke around with them to a point that I could read in their body language when they're getting serious, and they will try to either through corruption try to gain benefits that I probably would be willing to go with just because I want to get out of the situation, and Sam and I need to go have some good lunch or dinner. While in a different part of the world, here in the United States, we know that we know our rights from law enforcement. Um, but I think that's kind of what you're highlighting there. Then in the African continent, South America, even in China, we saw people just being blocked into their house for 14 days, forcefully being forced. So I think these are pretty interesting points to bring up. So thanks for sharing that.
So it's different everywhere, but you know, some things work here, some things just don't work elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So has anybody in your family been affected over there through these strong enforcement in Ghana? You still have family down over there, I
Uh,
assume.
oh yeah, yeah. My siblings, my parents are down there. They're home. So funny enough, I was talking to my dad last week, and he was telling me how he is in support of such drastic measures, and I asked him why. It just doesn't make sense. And he was like, "Well, yeah, because people are stolen." He takes a very different approach to it. He's much older, but people look at it differently. They see it as a necessary evil to be able to protect the greater good.
So if we could just wrap up this conversation with one final piece, right? So Americans right now are facing this dire circumstances that, depending on where you are in the country, you must remain inside your house or not go to work. Things have changed dramatically, right? People are hoarding for food. Uh, they're just their lives have changed a lot.
Mm,
Um, Irrespective of who you are financially, you could be impacted as well. I think there's a commonality between you and I, meaning that uh, have you heard of chancletas? It's a Spanish
yeah,
word for sandals.
yeah.
I myself, when the summer hits, I put on my sandals and I love it. And when I go to Dominican Republic, my family comes from a small town. There's a lot of poverty there, so
Mm,
that to me is normal. Meaning that
mhm,
not having a 40-inch TV in the living room, that was normal to me. And then when I came to the United States, it's like, all right, I guess I have to get a 40-inch TV just because, this is kind of the normal here. But the question I have to you is that around the world, in Ghana or Dominican Republic or elsewhere, poverty is the norm. And people
mm.
know how to adapt and overcome to their particular situations and challenges. From your perspective, what are some things that I think whoever's listening to this and Americans could actually could learn from other people's experiences in living in poverty, not being able to pay the rent, not having a job, not knowing where resources are going to come from. Because again, in Africa or Dominican Republic, people live like this. A lot of people live like this, and now because of this pandemic, to them this may be, and I don't want to sugarcoat this, it may be a little bit easier to deal with uncertainty just because that's kind of where they lived in, right?
Mm.
Lo- lo-
Interesting,
lo-
first of all.
lo- Loaded question there, but you said interesting what?
I said it's interesting how you put that question. Now, a couple of things that I'd want to preface this with. So when we talk about where we both come from, Dominican Republic, whether it's Ghana or some city in India, right? What we describe as poverty, which is basically a level of income or ability to afford life at a preset um, line that we consider a poverty line, right? Income level to number of people who live in a home. Now, the way we define that, and when we say, well, someone lives on $5 a day, it comes down to what they're able to do with that, right? And the opportunities that are available to them. A lot of the places that we will consider poor, and I speak especially for Ghana here, they wouldn't necessarily consider themselves poor. They will
Right.
consider themselves poor in resources, but if they can wake up every day, go to the farm that they work on and till with their own hands, with their 5 or 6 children, be able to get the food that they need, put food on the table, even now take those kids to school, have a conversation every day, know their kids in a much deeper way. They consider their lives to be a lot more full than a lot of us have over here.
Yes.
So, you know, sometimes that is very relative, and we throw around the word poverty as a description without necessarily considering the people themselves to whom we assign this word. So that's a little thought to frame that. Um, but definitely, growing up in a place where you have less makes you more resilient, makes you more aware of what the most important things in life really are. I've had to start from zero several times. And so when you understand what it's like to live without much, when you're forced to give up a lot, you just go back to who you were, who we all were at some point in time, one point or the other, and that gives you a different appreciation for life. It helps you focus on it. Because trust me, that millionaire, should all of this go, even right now, where you don't have a place to go spend your millions because everything is shut down, you learn to go back to the same few things that we all care about: our kids, our families, the people we love, the fact that we have life. that's what's important, and I think that's what we have to learn to appreciate within this whole situation that we're going through, and start to maybe live our normal lives if everything should ever go back to what we consider normal, with a little bit more respect to what really was important to start with.
So happiness, right? That's one of the things that I'm hearing of you. And one thing I want to close off by actually saying something, a trend that I've seen in myself now when I'm talking to folks is that I'm typically always talking about a book or tying the conversation to a poem or something else. Previous topics that we've had, sorry, in previous podcasts, I've discussed the
Mm-hmm.
book Jump by Steve Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
I've discussed kids books as well. I've learned a lot from kids books, man. One of them is um, an idea. What do you do with an idea? I don't know if you've read that. I know you have a newborn. I highly consider it, man. It's from an entrepreneur perspective. Um, the basically it's basically what do you do with an idea, and it illustrates an idea. You don't you I could tell you a pen. I could show you what a pen is, but in this book, an egg is utilized to have an idea, and this egg grows legs and it grows arms, and it follows the entrepreneur on what an idea is, and then the egg just flourishes, and now his idea becomes life. But I want to leave this conversation by talking about happiness, right? Where we spoke about the relativity of poverty and the relativity of wealth. Um, Paulo Coelho, have you heard of him?
Yeah.
So there's a 1 minute read. You probably know the story, The Fisherman and the Businessman. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for our listeners, I'm just going to highlight basically there's a fisherman and the businessman. And the businessman goes to Brazil, and he sees that this fisherman is consistently always catching fish all the time. And the businessman, being a businessman, he sees that as an opportunity to make money off of his craft of fishing,
Yeah.
fishing, fishing. And he has a conversation. He has a conversation regarding how can this individual turn this one fish into millions of fish and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to the businessman, he's saying, "Hey, I'm already." He had through the conversation, he says, "Hey, I hear you out, but why would I do that?" He said, "Well, because you're going to find happiness in wealth." He's like, but I'm already happy. I go fishing. I go to my house. I cook a meal for my family and my friends, and I'm singing music in Brazil. Come on, why would I want to give all this up? Because the businessman has clearly given that up. So I don't know. I think as you say you like that, you say you've heard of that story. So I think it's relatable to what we're talking about here, right?
It is. It is. Fundamentally, we all start on this journey, whether it's entrepreneurship, it is being in a high performance role, whatever it is that we're on, to find a piece of ourselves that flourishes, right? So if you're someone who's always having ideas, you want to see that idea come to life and you want to walk through that journey. You started from a very small business and then you're like, okay, one more this, one more that, one more investment, one more acquisition, one more measure. And then where's that going to? All in all, it's getting to a point where you're basically trying to get back to the same point where you started, just a little wiser, um, just a little bit more experience, just a little bit more knowledgeable, and maybe a little happier for the journey. But not much changes from the time when you had that idea to the time when you sell off that idea, retire that idea, or partner with someone else with that idea. Or not much changes because at the end of the day, all of this was so you could have a more meaningful life with the people that you loved. And just like that fisherman, it's not having 10,000 boats catching 5,000 more fishes and building an empire. Also, you could retire with the same people that you started out with, making just a single fish for every night. So we're coming back to the same thing and thinking our happiness isn't defined by a lot of what we have. It's really defined by who we're able to share whatever we have with, and try not to lose that.
For sure. So the book is written by Kobe Yamada. So it's Kobi. The last name is Yamada. I think you'll enjoy it. And with that, my friend, I want to make sure that I put a plug in for you. Restart is obviously Restart. You can look them up online, and I'll make sure I'll have information. You can join restart.com. Is that the main portal?
So joinrestart.com is our employer and member portal.
Okay,
Restart Works is where if the business is interested, they can go on there and understand what we do and what the benefit is to their customers and to themselves. Um, and so joinrestart.com or Restart Works, depending on whether you're a person who's trying to get some help or you're a business that wants to make a difference with service.
perfect. So Sam, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me on the podcast. Again, this is a podcast with Luis Antonio Ramirez. I'm the host. We have the co-founder of Restart with us today. We spoke a lot. We had a great conversation. So I really, really appreciate you making the time. And hopefully, when this comes out and people start listening to it, yeah, hopefully you get some more business down the end, either some companies that call you up.
That would be great. That would be great. But most especially, I'd love for people to maybe think of what they want to do. That's different from what they've always done. I love sharing ideas, talking through things, and helping people out. If that's what someone reaches out to me for, that's what 10,000 times. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, with that, my friend, I'm signing off, and thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, Louis, thank you very much.